being here.
So, well, the last time I had a reading, nobody came. So I drew on the chalkboard, I drew all these stick figures on the chalk, and I had my friend take a picture of me, like reading to the chalkboard with all the stick figures on there. And meanwhile, a friend of mine is giving his reading here way down the hall, so I figured, oh, everybody's going to be heading over to him. Thank you very much. My name is Drew Henriksen. This past summer, my third novel, Dragons and Science, was just released by Arc Books. So I'm pretty excited about that because in these times the market isn't too good. So I'm very happy that they're still in business and they're still pumping out my books. A little bit of background about the book before I get into the reading. I have my master's degree in immunology and medical biology, and I used to run a laboratory for North Shore University Hospital. I got sort of bored with that, so now I've been teaching high school forensic science, and I even teach a class in forensic science for Syracuse University as an adjunct. So I always like the idea of what if, okay, there's all these, all these scientific laws, what if you put a little bit of a twist on it? So I was going to read like different sections of the book, but I think I'll just start right from the beginning, and hopefully you enjoy. I'm funny not having to read a textbook to my students. Okay, Chapter 1, the laboratory. Poppy, as he was known in his youth, woke from a restless sleep. Rest was something that he had done without for about a week now. As did so many other nights, he sank his feet into his slippers and walked to the grand hall outside his room. All the guards knew not to disturb him or risk being transferred to a not-so-stately outpost. He made it to the balcony and stared up at all the stars in the night sky. What a long road it has been, he thought. I hope this isn't the time. V had a big, monumental day ahead of her. The rest of her supplies were arriving at the lab this morning. Past experiences taught her to keep an eagle eye on everything, or they become free pickings for the rest of the building. Half of the last shipment was wrong, and the cohorts plundered all the other half. Even with all those letters after our names, they were still spoiled brats. What worried her most were the clouds whirling up in the sky. Knowing her luck, it would open up just as the shipment unloaded from the truck. Don't think about it, V, she instructed herself. It will give you an ulcer. When McDonald's breakfast was sprawled out on the passenger seat of a new expedition. There was nothing like the combined aromas of coffee, Egg McMuffin, and new car smell. She has become the ultimate eating and driving expert. Knowing where every pothole was on the parkway was ensured a smooth, no-spill ride. At this rate, she could be at the lab by 7 o'clock and kapunk. At that point, she hit the new pothole that was in the road. A doozy at that, too. The whole car shifted to the side, but the coffee decided not to go along with it. Got that? All 16 ounces of hot liquid caffeine landed in her lap. Damn it, she screamed, and pulled off onto the grass. She could feel the coffee burning not just in her lap, but it was now running down her legs. She grabbed the napkins and quickly pulled up her skirt to stop it from scalding her even more. The small postage-sized stamp napkins were way too small to clean up the mess. So she started to use the paper wrappers. This just made it the more of a mess, since it seemed to have moved the coffee around as opposed to absorbing it. At least by now, though, the temperature had cooled, and she noticed the state trooper standing next to her in the window and screamed. "You okay, ma'am?" he asked from behind his Ray-Bans. V, with her skirt hiked up to her stomach and dripping with coffee, answered with a smile. "Oh yes, officer. I'm just friggin' peachy. Her worst nightmares were realized as the skies opened up as the shipment truck pulled into the compound. At least her lab coat covered up her ruined skirt. You would figure that a world-renowned institute such as Palindrome Laboratories would have a better loading bay, one with a roof. Granted, the men working quickly to get the boxes inside, but she was peeved that they wouldn't let her help. Sorry, Dr. Vroom, can't let you lift anything. Union regs, the foreman informed her. V could not for the life of her understand how the union would mind her making sure that thousands of dollars worth of equipment was taken care of safely. At least they didn't make her make the usual pun with her name. Vroom, vroom. She was revved up, boys, he cracked, and 2 seconds later, vroom, vroom, you're a jackass. Now get my order inside, she blurted out, sending the rest of the crew into hysterics. You're lucky I like you, Doc. The foreman replied, cracking a smile. What? What's there not to like? Now move it, she instructed. By 9 a.m., the supplies were safely in her own lab. Thanks to God's wonderful creation of plastic wrapping, the shipment frayed well against the rain. Colleen and Emily being the good grad students that they were, showed up promptly at 6:16 and 8:21 to help with the unpacking. Any other self-respecting scientist would have reprimanded them. But Bree remembered what it was like to be 23 and single. She would be a hypocrite if she came down too hard. And they would never call in sick or show up past 8:30, so a few extra minutes in the morning would be worth having two workers that were both loyal colleagues in a few years. With their help, all the reagents were accounted for and dated by lunchtime. Dr. Vroom, would you like anything from the salad hut? Colleen and I are heading out for lunch, Emily asked, throwing the last renegade box into the hallway. Our treat, Colleen added. If I know better, I'd say you want something, V cracked, looking at the boxes of equipment she unpacked. No, it's just brown nosing, Emily informed her. In that case, get me a normal Peter surprise. ×2, of course. How do you keep that weight off, Colleen asked. You have the metabolism of a hummingbird. It's those karate classes she takes. Are you a master kung fu type yet? Emily asked. It's Kempo, and I'm a third dan. Hey, I was just a few years younger than you when I started, V asked, noticing a particular box sitting on the equipment pile. I'll pass. I have enough to do with all the papers due next week, Emily said, putting on her rain slicker. Hundreds of little wells decorated, blowing water out of the portholes and smiling. Don't forget, I need one of you to lecture for me Thursday night, V suddenly said and forgot and meant to remind them all that morning. I'll take it, Colleen volunteered. I want to shut up that loudmouth again. Be nice, Howie is a tuition-paying student. Once I get tenured, then my guest speakers can be rude. She politely informed him. I can't call him a dick, asked Colleen. Next year, hon, next year. With that, the two grad students left the lab, letting V's attention return back to the box. It didn't seem to belong to the rest of the shipment. Even the cardboard was a different shade, older looking. There were no labels on it, only fragile, handled with care. Was stamped in faded red ink. Curiosity is normal control over her, and she took it off the stack. Bone dry, it must have been at the bottom of the pile outside. But then, it would have been crushed. Another mystery at Palindrome. Lord knows there were enough of them. The large copper staples gave way with little effort. Inside was a mass of brown shredded paper, instead of the usual styrofoam peanuts. More paper, she thought, expecting to find a tiny flashlight bulb or just one test tube. She reached down and did discover smooth glass. Not recalling what she could have ordered, she pulled out the glass ball and pulled the glass ball out and was underwhelmed. It was a plain glass ball. There was not even measurements on it. She checked the invoice and found no glass ball on the list. And deduced it was just left over from somebody else's shipment and got mixed up with hers. Well, finders keepers. She placed it away in one of the dozens of cabinets and went back to her inventory. Then, ever so faintly, she heard a wail. Once in a while, she would hear Burns's chimps throwing a fit. Yet this was different. Keeping totally still, she waited and heard it again. However, it wasn't a wail. It was a howl. Who are they? Colleen and Emily asked in the parking lot. They have to be government. Suits, sunglasses, sedans, and crew cuts. They're not selling Amway, Emily answered, unlocking her aging Toyota. When they left the H-Drive building, they immediately noticed there were 3 identical brown 4-door cars parked in front of the central office. A half dozen men, all dressed identically, stood perfectly straight around the sedans, scanning the lab's campus. What do you think's going on? Colleen asked. Who's doing government work? I think it's Burns. She just got a dozen chimps sent to her, Emily said, opening the car door, sending out a resonating squeal. Like robots. Every head turned and looked right at them. The 2 girls froze as the agent stared at them. Unmoving, Colleen wondered if the birds were going to land on them. She raised a hand and waved them with her fingers. They went back to their scanning, except for one with a crew cut, so blonde it almost appeared white. Get in the car, Colleen shouted from across the room. The agent rotated his head away and resumed looking over the compound. The 2 of them hopped into a Toyota and started the engine. The last one really scared the crap out of her, Emily confessed, not wanting to look behind her and pulled out. They all scared me, Colleen asked, and Emily looked behind her to make sure no one was coming. The 2 remained quite quiet as they pulled out and slipped the car into drive. The simple task of leaving seemed to be a laborious effort to escape. When they finally passed the main gates, each one took a deep breath. I'm actually going to jump ahead to a more exciting part as opposed to the setup here. As night fell, Elias had finished scrubbing the lab floors. For Burns. He could understand why she wanted the red bag waste burned early. It smelled awful. Now she was finishing up with her combustion. Far in the back of his mind, he saw flaming monkey corpses jumping out of the incinerator and hopping after him. A high-pitched squeal yelling bloody murder as they came descending upon him. Before he knew it, oops, I'm sorry, I sort of skipped over. Bear with me, it's early. Okay, let me start over, please. As night fell, Elias finished scrubbing the lab floor down for Burns. He could understand why she wanted the red bag waste burned early. It smelled awful. Now that she was finishing up her work, she was dissecting more of the animals using her experience. Not something you want around, piled in the corner. There had to be at least 20 bags, all with the weird biohazard symbol on it. Why the hell couldn't they just write the word biohazard was a mystery to him. He had wheeled the big bin from the incinerator room and was now wondering if he could manage it all in one trip. If it was anybody else asking him, he would have told them to go take a flying leap. No use in dilly-dallying, time to work. His father always told him that a man's work it makes him better. Also getting used to my reading glasses. Also told him that a man's work is what makes him a man. He wheeled the bin over with gloves on. He grabbed the first bag. Immediately, he felt the ribs of the monkey's dead body. It felt like a stuffed raccoon his dad had in the living room as a kid. Handling dead animals was nothing new to him. But the chimps were so much like people, it did put a chill in his bones. A quick nip of Philadelphia whiskey took care of that, too sweet. One by one, he loaded the dead monkeys into the bin. On some of them, he can feel the open body cavity through the bag. Then, one twitched in his hand. He dropped it immediately on the floor. He stared at it as it laid on the green tiled floor. The red and green looked like a putrid Christmas decoration. It didn't move. He touched it again with his fingertips, and then his palm. All he felt was the lifeless backbone in the shoulder blade. He wondered if he should open it up and see if the little critter was still alive. Pushing the thought out of his head, he grabbed it and threw it back in the bin. Nearing the bottom of the bottle, he realized that he would be able to take it all in one run. He seized the next bag and felt a sharp pain in the middle of his palm. Shit! He yelled and yanked his hand away. Sure enough, he saw the little hole in the glove, and red blood seeping in between his hand and the latex. God damn it, you whore. He hollered and ripped off the glove. He immediately started to massage his hand to get the blood to bleed more. The extra blood supposedly would help wash out the wound. Out of instinct, he licked it. After all, that's what dogs do when they were wounded. Within a moment, the bleeding stopped, and before his eyes, it almost looked like the hole healed itself. There was no pain, and if it weren't for the hole and the blood coming in the glove, he never would have known he was pricked. Sure enough, the bag on the ground had a needle sticking out of it. Burns must have accidentally thrown it in the bag. If he had been working slower, he probably wouldn't have poked himself. Very carefully, he picked it up and placed it in the bin. The next bag was empty, ripped in half. 5 minutes later, he was done and happy to get out of the lab. The incinerator was in the basement. Mercifully, it was in their own building. The other guys had to wheel their crap from all over the campus just to use it. On Friday, they would line up for an hour just to get their load onto the conveyor belt. For that reason, Elias always waited until nighttime. That way he can just dump the shit onto the belt, let it get carried in through the iron doors, only to be reduced into ash. Tonight, he couldn't wait to hear the doors clank shut and seal off the blasted bodies forever. The feel of the bag twitching was still in his fingertips. He had covered up all the thoughts of the needle stick and began to consume him. He watched the bags carefully as they plopped onto the conveyor belt from the bin. Each one landed with a dead thump and started its journey into the flames. If you can only speed it up like on I Love Lucy, then the whole mess could be over with. He recognized the bag that had twitched in his fingers before as it fell onto the belt. He watched it intently as he did before. No movement. Like all the others, it lay motionless as it made its way to the internal combustion. Far in the back of his mind, he saw the flaming monkey corpses jumping out of the incinerator and hopping after him. A high-pitched scream yelling bloody murder as they came descending upon him. Before he knew it, the dreaded bag was in the doors and dropped off into the furnace. With that out of the way, he relaxed and looked at the last of them moving to the end. Now, all of them looked like they were moving. Elias froze in fear. He couldn't tell if they were moving on their own or if it was just the convection from the heat ruffling the bags. His mind told him it was nothing, but the growing fear told him that there was living beings inside. Just when he felt he was going to explode, the last bag fell into the large doors and sealed off. Solace warmed through his veins as the nightmare was suddenly over. His stomach rang out its 2 cents, demanding steak, very rare steak. Elias looked back at the shut doors, enjoying the fact that all the fear was now gone in the flames. And if his hearing has been better, he might have heard their screams coming from the other side. Hey. last excerpt, chapter 4, The Storm. I see my grandmother, Pruitt told the others. She's right there, dressed in white. Stick with us, Pruitt, Kirkland ordered. You're just hallucinating. Chapman and Beliso held on to him tighter, fearing he would give up and let himself drown. Only one's allowed to die here tonight, and that's me. And I'm not checking out. Kirkland hollered, fearing the same. Kirkland prided himself, never losing anyone under his command, nor the Mets cap that he wore. While exiting the mission, these were good men, and they were not about to let him die for nothing, especially a blowhole like Stone. The mission was flawless. They were in and out of the lab before anybody knew better. No one was killed. He knew others had developed a taste for blood. Neither he nor his boys had followed the same fate. The fishing boat was perfect. No one caught on. If only the weather they had predicted the nor'easter would have been more accurate, he'd be buying dinner at Wellington's. Instead, they clung on to what was left of the raft. It was as if God himself intervened and stopped them. The swells lifted them to dizzying heights and then plummeted them back down like a sarcastic roller coaster. But I do see her. She's with Dorga and some Chinese woman, Pruitt insisted. Dorga's dead. Been dead for a year, Beliso shouted, answering another swell as another swell began to rise him. No, it's him. He's giving you the finger right now, Pruitt laughed. That sounds like Dorga, Beliso yelled. Enough. Those people are dead, and you're not, Kirkland screamed. He said you remind him of George Clooney right now, Pruitt continued. What Kirkland feared the most was beginning to happen. Hypothermia was setting in. The storm blew up so quickly they hadn't had time to put on their rescue gear. Hopefully his Mayday made it to base got through. And if it didn't, that they want to be rescued. I know, Grandma. I love you too, Pruitt sobbed. Stop it, soldier, Chapman yelled. I'd like to see this sister of yours again, but not in black. Pruitt smiled all the more. She says, you two will definitely get together, he said and began to slide into the water. Pruitt, don't give up, Kirkland cried as young Pruitt slipped into the icy waters of the North Atlantic. All of the remaining three were torn between going after him and facing death themselves, or clinging on to and completing the mission. All wanted to go down with him, but clung to the side instead. Something floated above Kirkland's head. His instincts were still sharp, and he knew it couldn't be seagulls. He looked up and almost let go in awe. 6 giant bats were diving at him from the sky. In a few seconds, he saw that some of them had horns on their heads. One had a mane of long flowing hair blowing wildly in the wind. One of them dove into the water where Pruitt had just submerged. Chapman and Beliso looked up as one of the 2 bat creatures grabbed each of their arms. Instantly, Kirkland felt 2 vice-like grips grab his shoulders. Instantly, They were incredibly strong, but not crushing. There was a jerk, and he felt himself being lifted out of the water. His feet were dangling under him as if the ref was far below. It suddenly flew up, and the bat creature that had dove into the water came up with Pruitt in his arms. Somehow he knew that they were safe, and he finally succumbed to unconsciousness. I told you it wasn't time for you to die yet, Dorga whispered to his ears. So I'll end it there. You say a little early, I'm getting used to my new reading glasses. I'm not used to reading regular books instead of textbooks. You will have a quiz later on. Any questions?
Just a sort of a general question in terms of essentially forensic techniques as technology advances in the future. How does it not become, be unbeatable?
Because there's human error. The same for the exact reason that the Nassau County Forensics Lab was shut down. There's the possibility of too much bias. And the problem is with the court of law, it's not based on science. You just have to put reasonable doubt in a juror's mind. So if you have a jury, which tends to be a lot of times not too science savvy, no matter how good your science is, if you have a defense attorney saying, okay, yes, this laboratory is saying that this DNA matched my defendant's, my client's DNA type. Well, you know, in my day, we didn't have these computers, and you know what? Just the other day, the computer screwed up on my bank statement. How do I know the computer didn't screw up with this? A man's life is at stake. How do I know that you didn't sneeze and get the... No matter how... Look at the Casey Anthony case. Dead to rights. Actually, I feel with that case, they overused forensics. They stretched the forensics, especially when they were talking about the chemistry in the trunk of the car, the cadaverine. Because that's an amino acid that's released during decomposition. They're saying, oh, we had a chemical detector that detected the you know. Oh, she left steaks decomposing in there. Okay, you know, that's in the jury's mind. It's like, wait a minute, yeah, that's a logical explanation. If there's a logical explanation for this, there's a logical explanation for that. And a lot of forensic science can be wrong, because then you have a forensic technician, you know, it's like, I know this guy is guilty as hell. You know what? I found a trace of that protein. The O.J. Simpson case, I've been to many lectures for different people on the defense team on the O.J. Simpson case. Only thing they did was the O.J. Simpson case. You just have to show reasonable doubt. Here's the mansion. Here's O.J. Simpson's Bronco. The trail of blood. Cato Caitlin's apartment. I mean, the trail of blood. So apparently O.J. Simpson's bleeding, going from his car. Cato Caitlin's apartment where he heard the smack, and here's the glove. What's wrong with that scenario? He pulls in, trail of blood going in here. Bloody glove found over here. What's wrong with that? How did it get there? Their scenario. Oh, he came home, he drove over. But yet, at a certain time, Cato Caitlin heard a smash over here. So basically, what happened was that O.J. when Furman got to the scene, it's like, oh, I gotta help my case a little bit. You know, this is all presumed. Of course, I'm not saying definitely. Let me help out my case. Oops. As soon as they show that the evidence was tampered with, is that reasonable doubt? So no matter how accurate your science is, what the odds by the billions, as long as the jury thinks that that evidence was tampered, your case is out the window. So, and that's the problem with forensics. And the CSI factor. Everybody thinks that it's as infallible, and it is fallible. And that's why you have to cross your T's, dot your I's, and make it understandable to a jury. Oh, it's 11 o'clock.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.